just in this like heightened state of go, 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 a vacation is not going to fix your burnout. I see this with a lot of teachers.
Welcome back to Educator University. As teachers, we spend a lot of our time giving to others. But what happens when you have nothing left to give? Well, that's when we have burnout. Today's podcast guest is a therapist who has a decade of experience. Laurel Roberts-Meets is going to help us today with her top tips and share how we can create a more sustainable career. Welcome, Laurel.
Hi.
Hey there. I think as teachers, we hear this word burnout a lot kind of thrown around. Could you help define it for us just so we have that in the back of our minds as we go through today's discussion?
Yeah, it's a state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by a number of things. It's, not having a lot of control over your work environment and, maybe classroom assignment and all that. And also, I will add on to that a pathological pattern of not prioritizing yourself is what causes it, right? So we're looking at it. People often kind of their symptoms are either, like more psychological or more physical or more emotional, but just, when you're starting to feel out of balance, when you're starting to feel cynical. Teachers give so much because they care so much. Like you think about your students and you're just like, oh, these kids, like I want to give them everything. I want to set them up for success. I want to make sure that you're providing protection for them for the rest of their lives in the form of education and a positive adult role model. So it makes sense that teachers have a very high burnout rate because they're so passionate about what they do, but they don't necessarily put into practice things that will help them sustain it for the long haul so they can have the maximum impact on the most students, right? That they tend to approach it with a more sprint mentality. And you really need to look at it as like, this is a marathon. This is a lifelong, for many people, a lifelong career, or want it to be a lifelong career. And I'm sure many people listening are like, I don't know how many more years I have left because they're burnt out. Right? Teachers are under-resourced, they're underpaid, underappreciated, and so all of these ingredients really build the perfect recipe for burnout.
Yes, and I think a lot of teachers can understand that they start to feel those feelings. Maybe they're not sure if it's really something they're experiencing. So maybe you could share some of the things that would be symptoms of burnout that they could indicate, okay, this is what burnout looks like for a teacher, for me maybe.
Yeah. Well, cynicism is one of the biggest, kind of emotional red flags. Like, oh, why does it matter? I'm just going to, teach long division to a bunch of people again, like feeling disconnected from the meaning and the values that brought you into the field that made you want to be a teacher. But beyond that, like cynicism, and we're looking at the mental and physical exhaustion. I know AI in education is a real hot button topic, but I see people that are burnt out progressively relying more and more on AI because they just like don't have the mental bandwidth to do the work themselves. So, that's a symptom if you're just like constantly going to ChatGPT for something, like to come up with assignments, or also withdrawing from family and friends or hobbies that you used to really love. And, you're exhausted. So you're trying to conserve your energy, but what ends up happening is you just scroll on your phone and you don't actually do anything that's restorative and replenishes that reserve. And you may not know what replenishes that reserve. You just know that you're empty. Right. So it really is the exhaustion piece, but there's something very specific that it's kind of career exhaustion, and it can bleed out into other parts of your life, but primarily it is about work.
And I think there's maybe a discrepancy between fatigue of like I've had a hard day and then like this fatigue of I'm feeling exhausted. There's kind of a difference between those two pieces.
It's more of like an existential exhaustion rather than a physical exhaustion. Although I will say, hey, I've worked with some teachers and they're like, I'm just so tired at the end of the day. And I'm like, did you drink water throughout the day? And I know teachers don't have a lot of time. So they're like, I don't want to have to go to the bathroom all the time. So like dehydration will make you exhausted. Your body just doesn't have enough water to have like your organs functioning properly. But it's bigger than that. It's not something that a glass of water or a nap is going to fix. It's that existential tiredness.
Yeah. So if a teacher is starting to identify, I think those things we're saying are applying to me. I am feeling burnt out.
Yeah.
If If you were talking to them, what would you say are some first steps for them that they could do to start
Hmm.
working on this?
Yeah, I have a recipe, right? I have a
Okay.
recipe for treating this because when people are so tired, they don't want to have to like come up with their own treatment plan, right? So the first thing is figuring out, how do you rest effectively? And a lot of people don't know. Teachers are naturally energetic, achievement oriented people. They feel called to service. And so resting can feel like kind of naughty, like, oh, I'm resting. Like, but you have to, right? There is no machine or plant or animal out there that doesn't ever rest. Like, we have to be in a cycle of output versus input. And so figuring out how you rest, and I'm going to spoil it here, it's not on your phone. Your phone is not how you rest. Like, maybe listening to a really soothing audiobook or meditation app, that can help your rest. But just scrolling or kind of going through your apps, playing games, not actually restful, because it's not a deep mental rest. So I'm not the biggest fan of meditation. I find it like kind of awkward, and like do I need to like get a cushion, and like do I need to listen to a guided meditation? And some people, meditation is for them. That's great. But I'm just a little too high energy for that. So I like to just practice mindfulness, which is like little bite-sized bringing yourself into the moment. And it could be just noticing like, hey, you know what? There's a little bit of trash in the corner of my classroom. Okay, I'm just noticing that. I don't need to run over and pick it up right now. We're just noticing it's there. Like, it's not a crisis. And okay, then in a moment we can go over and handle it. Or it could be noticing the way the light in your classroom is shifting, or just the vibration of the bus as you are headed home at the end of the day. Something that grounds you in your senses, that brings you into the moment, because 99.99% of the time, there is nothing incredibly urgent in the present moment. In terms of our physical safety, like, yes, there are things that need to be done, but very few of them are incredibly urgent. And I think teachers kind of go into this mode of like, everything is urgent. And yes, sometimes there are urgent things happening in the classroom. That's not when you want to be practicing mindfulness. But when your nervous system is just in this like heightened state of go, 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 then that becomes the default, and you get very stressed and very anxious as a default. And it's really hard to down regulate your nervous system. So finding little ways to start doing that throughout the day. And I know like everyone's like, yeah, mindfulness, I'll get to it. But just it's something that takes very little time and energy and can really shift your mental state.
Yeah, and I've noticed for myself just slowing down my movements sometimes,
Yes.
like just picking up papers and not rushing for it,
Yeah.
just grabbing it slowly just so I can take a
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. It's not just your mind, it's also your body, because they're so interconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that first step too is creating routines in your day that
Yeah.
kind of remind you to be mindful.
Yeah.
I know for me, starting my day a little bit more just softly, even before I get to school, if possible, is a great way to regulate myself and not be woken up to like craziness running out the door. Maybe having a little time to process the morning before you, not everyone has the luxury of that, of course, but just finding
Yeah.
moments even within your day to have a little bit of that.
I want to add on to what you said, that starting the day out a little softer. Honestly, for personally, and then also in my clients that I work with, if you are in a position where you can sleep with your phone in a different room, that'll change your life. Because first of all, you'll put your phone down and then you'll get in bed. You're not going to scroll, right? So you'll get more sleep. And then if the first thing you do in the morning is something other than reaching to check your email and your notifications and all that, it gives your nervous system more of an on-ramp to the day. Right? So get an alarm clock and put your phone somewhere else, because really we know our phones are bad for our mental health. And what if you were to, get up when your alarm goes off and then you go have a cup of coffee? I know teachers are early risers, watch the sunset from your window or, your apartment balcony or something, and just have a few moments before you jump on the highway, figuratively speaking, really will shift your day and your
Yeah.
nervous system.
Yeah, those little moments.
Yeah.
That was your first step, and
Yeah,
then you have the
learning
five
to
steps.
rest.
Learning to
And that's
rest.
the
Yeah.
hardest step, honestly, is learning to
Yeah.
rest.
That's why it's first, right?
It's why is first, yeah. So then we're going into y'all are educators. I can use more advanced language, like the biopsychosocial model of wellness and health, which is really just looking at like a holistic picture of how you're doing in terms of your like balance and wellness. So the outer layer of your wellness is your physical health, like medical stuff. Um, if people are burnt out, they come to me. The first thing I say was, when was your last physical? And if it's been a while, I say, okay, I want you to schedule a physical and I want you to get some lab work done. I want you to get your thyroid checked. I want you to get your iron checked and like vitamin D and other like mineral deficiencies, because sometimes I've had it happen where someone comes to me and they're like, I am exhausted. And we could spend, 6 months working on burnout, or maybe they have a thyroid condition, or maybe they have a rare sleep disorder, right? So, and I've had that happen where luckily we caught it early and we didn't need to spend 6 months to a year doing therapy when like they needed a thyroid medication, you know.
Yeah.
So, particularly for women, looking at that thyroid, because more and more people are having thyroid disorders that can make you feel exhausted. So we just want to rule that out, so you're not like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill every day, and then you wake up and you're at the bottom of the hill. So looking at those medical things, like, is there medication you need to take more regularly, or something there? Just looking at your physical health, because if that's out of whack, it's going to be really hard to recover from burnout. And burnout takes a long time to recover from regardless. So we want to make sure there isn't something in addition, just like putting extra weight on top of it. So some people experience a lot of relief just looking at medical stuff. Like, oh yeah, you know what? I really do need to remember to take my iron supplements more regularly, and I just keep forgetting. Okay, put them by your toothbrush. Or set an alarm on your phone. Like, just find a way to like make it easy for you, right? And I would put water up there as well with your physical health. Start the day out with a big glass of water, because again, you're going to be real exhausted at the end of the day if you've not had any water. Anyway, I'm talking to a very smart audience, so I don't want to
Yes.
infantilize anyone by like going
No.
through these like very basic things.
We're
Yeah.
familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs because that's what we learn
Yeah.
a lot about. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's almost doing that for ourselves, because
It
our
is.
students, we're always outwardly thinking, okay, does this kid have food?
Yeah.
Does they have water? Are they
Yeah.
good? And then it's looking
Yeah.
at ourselves and thinking the same thing. Are we
Yeah.
physically doing well? So,
And
yeah.
I hear so many teachers talk about skipping meals, and I'm just like, no, you're gonna be like, you're just gonna be constantly playing catch up. Like, even if you take 5 minutes to like run to the teacher's lounge and stuff something in your face, please do that. Or, get protein bars, trail mix, although a lot of schools are nut free, but just something, string cheese. It doesn't have to be the most nutritious thing in the world. You just need some nutrients. You need fuel. So put your own mask on first.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
So,
that's
yeah,
outer
after
layer.
the physical kind of layer,
Yeah.
that's such an important piece because that's the basis of everything else. If you're
Yes.
not feeling physically well, how can you mentally
Yeah.
move into the next step? So,
Yeah. And sleep is also in that layer. But that bleeds into the next category, which is honestly, you can spend a lot of time focused. The next layer of health is your behavioral health. So this is all the things like we know we should do, but they are like kind of annoying, or like we feel guilty for not doing them, or they just get deprioritized. This is moving your body, so movement, exercise, getting like really good quality sleep, cutting down on alcohol and other substances, like anything that you just generally know behaviorally is good for you, or to like do less of because it's not good for you, right? This behavioral layer, it could also be things like, repeatedly engaging in behavior that you always feel bad afterwards. Like, there are a lot of reasons people struggle with this category, right? I mean, unfortunately, substances do work really quickly to bring down anxiety and to help your nervous system come down at the end of the day. But the problem is, I like to say it's like buying something on credit. Like, the bill does come due. And it's not a long-term strategy for managing stress. So looking at that layer, you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out, how do I get more movement in? Particularly for teachers that have kids or, are taking care of a sick family member. Movement is really so important. Like, the mind and the body are so connected, and we're just discovering every day more and more how much you can hack your brain by using your body. In particular, anything that is bilateral. So like walking or running, that would be bilateral. Swimming is bilateral. But I would say anything that you find fun or enjoyable. And also I would add, like, if you are more of an extrovert, something that you can be social around is great. So, I was like just getting a group of friends together to go to these like line dance lessons. Like, it's fun. Like, it doesn't need to be like something super intense where you're like going to the gym and like sweating profusely and like you feel kind of beat up afterwards. Like, ultimately you should enjoy it and find it sustainable. So I see a lot of, and I know teachers are on their feet every day, so that there is a lot of called neat non-exercise active time, but finding time to be active in a way that's just for yourself is important too.
Yeah, getting that movement in the day. However, like you
Yeah.
said, it doesn't have to be something big, or you don't have to even buy membership at a gym. You can just go for a walk or
Yeah.
find other ways to just have fun. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other part I'll add here, and I ruffle some feathers when I say this, but if you're feeling burnt out, it is not a good time to start or continue a calorically restrictive meal plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your body needs fuel to operate. Your organs need fuel. And if you are not giving your body enough fuel, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to have mental impact. So, I understand like body image and food are like very personal topics, but unless you've been recommended by a medical doctor to lose weight for a specific reason, like you had lab work that came back and was like, hey, we really need to get your cholesterol down or your A1C or something. Unless you've been like medically advised for a lab related reason, I would not recommend restricting calories while you're trying to prevent or recover from burnout.
Yeah, that's a good clarification because I
Yeah.
think when you're under stress, sometimes you're making choices
Yeah.
in a kind of a fight or fight state, and you might
Yes.
choose to do that in that moment, thinking, okay,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do,
Yeah.
but not thinking full scale of how it's going to affect you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, food and mood are so closely tied. And the other thing I'll say about food is that, like, food needs to be functional and pleasurable. Right? Like, we need to get some pleasure from food. You can't eat things only because they're good for you, and you can't eat things only because they taste good. Like, it needs to be both. It needs to be like, okay, well, I ate like a really nutrient dense meal, and like I got plenty of protein and leafy greens, and like I'm gonna let myself have a treat after dinner, like it's got to be both.
Balance. Yeah, balancing it off. Yeah.
So the next layer of health is your deep, meaningful relationships. This can be a partner or partners. It can be, very good friendships. It can be family members. It can be a pet. It can be colleagues, absolutely, as long as there's some like genuine, like intimate, like emotional intimacy there. We know that people who have deep, meaningful relationships have far better health outcomes. A person that has the same cancer diagnosis, who has a very rich, personal life with lots of community and family support, has a much better prognosis than someone who's relatively isolated or has a small support system. So, looking at ways to deepen your current social circle and deepen your loving relationships. And it can be tricky when you're feeling burnt out because you already feel like you don't have a lot of bandwidth. You don't want to make yourself vulnerable to deepen a friendship. But like you really do need to. Relationships are the juice of life. They are what make things meaningful, and they are really the only security most of us have. And so making sure that you nurture those relationships while also prioritizing rest. And it may be that like you pair movement with socializing, or, you have an accountability buddy that you're like, yep, we're both going to go to bed at 9 p.m. every night. And I'm going to text you going to bed. Good night. Right. You can socialize some of the behavioral things.
I love that tip because that way
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of two for one it. You can
Yes.
get your exercise and some socialization in
Yeah.
there too. So,
Yeah.
And I think one of the things you mentioned is creating a personal life. Like, yes, you can have friends at school or
Yeah.
friends as their job, but also finding it outside of the job too. Because sometimes with the teacher friends is that you end up talking about work outside of school, which brings you back into it's like you're just constantly in the cycle of thinking about your job instead of
Yeah.
having a life outside of the
Yeah.
career.
And then your nervous system gets activated like you're back at work and what you actually need is rest time. So
Yeah.
you could hang out with work friends and be like, "Hey, I'm going to set a rule. No work talk. Tell me about you outside of work." "Oh, I had no idea you were a quilter." Or "I didn't know that you like are homesteading. Tell me about that." Or like, "Oh, you like hiking too. Well, let's check out this trail together," right? So setting some parameters can deepen the relationship.
Yeah, and help create a little bit of calm for yourself and probably for
Mhm.
them too, because I think we
Yeah.
all want a little bit more of that in our
Yeah.
life, and just like articulating it and being the first one to say, "Hey, let's keep school at school." Sometimes it's kind
Yeah.
of a powerful and a little bit of a boundary that some people it's going to be a little bit of a. I know
Yeah.
teachers who I know might be a little bit of a stretch to say that. Be like, "Hey, can we not talk about school?" It'll be a
Yeah.
little bit of a challenge, but a good challenge. Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard when you care so much about what you do, when your job is a calling,
Yeah.
and I work with a lot of people for whom that is the case. I see a lot of, like, um, uh, medical professionals and entrepreneurs, people that run small businesses, and that they just feel like I have to do this work. It's so meaningful to me. And how do I protect myself and prioritize myself while still doing the meaningful work? I'm a therapist. Like, I love what I do. I'm one of the lucky few that's like, I can't believe I get to make a living doing this. This is awesome. And a lot of my friends are therapists. And of course, we talk shop when we hang out, like, oh, yeah, I did this training and like I learned this. Or like, hey, do you have any resources about this? Or, like, hey, do you have a minute for a clinical consultation? And of course, we always protect people's identities when we do that. But it is hard to like have those boundaries up. But sometimes, setting that is a fun challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we can all do a little bit more of that as well, just to
Yeah.
make it more normal.
I
Yeah.
heard an interesting term. It was in the New York Times. There was an article about deepening friendships, and they talked about repotting a friendship, which is like you take a friend from one context and bring them into a new context. So like maybe you've only hung out at work, but then like there's a cool like a favorite author is coming to a local bookstore, and you're like, hey, do you want to go with me? And you deepen a friendship by bringing them into a new context and allowing it to grow there.
I love that term, repotting. What a great
Mm-hmm.
metaphor for what
Yeah.
friendships could be and
Yeah.
opening friendships in a way. By
Yeah.
creating these, I think with boundaries, sometimes it's interesting that when you create boundaries, you actually open up more space that you didn't realize was there, which is seems almost paradoxical, but that's really what you're saying in a way, is it
Yeah.
opens up a new space for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My favorite two words about therapy are structure and containment. It works because it's structured and contained. And we can do the same with friendships.
Yeah.
My other tip on building and deepening friendships is look for people who are in transition. So, someone that just went through a separation or is new to teaching at your school, or just had a baby, or a kid just went to college, or something like that, or they bought a new house. Transitions naturally open people up to be more receptive to new relationships and deepening relationships in their life. So, people that are just kind of in the middle of life without any big changes, they kind of often have their friend group where they're just kind of in a routine and they're not as receptive. But people in transition often are receptive. So that can be a good thing to identify in potential new friendships.
That is such a great tip because teachers are often trying out and going to a new school or maybe moving into different subject areas and they might feel alone. And so just kind of looking for the people in that area is such a great strategy.
Yeah, yeah. The last layer is, some people call it spiritual health, but I really look at as like being firmly grounded in a set of personal values. For some people, that is around faith or spirituality. A lot of people I work with are more agnostic or have like a personal spirituality or faith, and it isn't kind of delineated by a denomination. But I think a lot of teachers, like, they are very grounded in their values. It's often around community and service and learning, right? But actually, like, doing a values sort, like if you just Google values, like list of personal values, and you read some of them, you'll be like, oh yeah, I actually do have a strong set of values. But identifying them and writing them down, keeping them somewhere and reflecting on them as you need to make decisions and move forward in your life can really just help you live your best life and help burnout proof your life. Because there was a study out of the Mayo Clinic 10-15 years ago that found that doctors who were allowed to spend 20% of their time doing work that they found personally meaningful or invigorating had a significantly lower chance of burning out. So when we look at what do we find meaningful, what are our personal values, and devote some time to it, we're much less likely to burn out and to feel fulfilled in our jobs and in our greater lives.
Do you have any tips on, I think you mentioned earlier, teachers are so busy and sometimes so outward focused. Maybe they don't know what fulfills them at this point. Maybe they're just like, I don't even know where to start. I just know that I'm a teacher. I know how to help people. I don't even know what I like or value. What would you kind of maybe give some advice for that kind of teacher right now?
If you had a day all to yourself where you got to call all the shots, what would it look like? Imagine it's your birthday or it's Mother's Day or, something, and you kind of get to be in charge. How would you spend your ideal day? Would you spend it in a hammock reading? Would you spend it hiking with the dogs? Would you do art or cook with your kids? Would you throw a party for your neighborhood? What does your ideal day look like? When you think about what you want that day to look like, that can guide you towards what you value most. And sometimes when we're burnt out, it's like, I would just spend it sleeping. Like, imagine you have all the energy in the world. Imagine you're at your best. And how would you want that day to look? And that can give you some pointers towards what you find meaningful and invigorating. You can also kind of think along the lines of introversion versus extroversion. I'm somewhere in the middle, so I'd want some socializing and some solo time, or time just with my partner, which feels like solo time to me. And then an extrovert might be like, yeah, I'm going to throw a block party, and then we're going to go to a local sports game, and then there's going to be a party afterwards, and then the next day we're going to share all the photos that we had on social, right? That's people are filled by different things, and picturing what your ideal day would look like can point you in that direction.
That's such a powerful question. It's such a great way to start thinking about that in a very safe and just fun way. Not because I think sometimes we feel stressed. If we're under burnout, and then or teachers might feel, okay, like what do I want to do? And they just feel a lot of anxiety. And I think that just that idea of planning a day just sounds like fun. Just take a minute and think about a day that you would enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a fun way to spend even 10 minutes.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Imagine you've had a couple days of sleep and you're good.
Yeah. Replenished a little bit. Yeah. Summer break, maybe. Imagine you're in summer. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is summer right now, so hopefully people are feeling more positive. And if people are coming back to this episode later during the school year, then imagine it is summer.
Yeah. Yes. I love it. So those are kind of your 5 steps, and I think each one is such a pivotal point, and it's probably I'm guessing from a lot of your experience working with clients and seeing the different things. And so you really bring that experience with those tips to help teachers out. So that's really helpful. I think some of the questions that I had as well as kind of going over your step process is thinking about teachers and thinking about maybe uniquely to them, what are some of the patterns or beliefs that you've kind of seen teachers having that is something that causes more burnout, makes them think, it makes them kind of more in that direction and not so much towards sustainable, balanced life?
Yeah. A lot of teachers are natural nurturers and givers, and they don't prioritize themselves, and they have this secret hope that someone will do it for them, that someone will come in and rescue them and tell them oh, you deserve a spa day, you deserve a day off. Well, guess what? You get to be that person that comes in and tells you get a day off, you get a spa day. You're going to take care of yourself, because most of the time that rescuer is not coming. And it's such a beautiful idea, but you can't wait to feel better for someone else to notice, right? That's just not going to work. And with that kind of, archetype of the nurturer, the giver, the, caretaker, is this kind of, people really like to be needed. And this is not a bad thing, but also there are things that you can delegate and you need to. right? If you have a teaching aide, or you have, let's say you have an after school babysitter for your kids, like you can delegate some tasks to these people. Now, we don't just want to like shove a bunch of work on their plate. We want to do it relationally, and we want to do it with that structure and containment. But getting things off your plate that don't necessarily need to be on your plate. So I like to think of things are in 4 categories: do, date, delegate, delete. So do is like you have to do it right now, like picking up your own sick kid from school. Like you probably need to do it right now. Or there's a kid in your classroom that is ill, like you need to like get that child to the nurse, right? Do, which is like right now, can't wait. Date is like we're going to schedule it, like movement, like filing your taxes, like grading papers, like, we're going to set a time for that. Delegate is like, this really doesn't need to be me. Like there's no reason why someone else couldn't do this. Now, maybe you have a standard for yourself. I see this with a lot of teachers. You have a standard you want it to be done to, and that's the reason you don't delegate it. But then you think about the value of your time and your mental wellness. And like, could you handle a couple bruised apples and some forgotten cream cheese if it meant you didn't have to go to the grocery store? Yeah, I think most people would say yes, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so really just you may need to slightly lower your standard, but it's worth it for you to get the mental space and the physical time to actually rest or do something you enjoy. And then the delete category is like stuff like playing games on your phone, or like, things that are kind of time wasters that don't add to your life in a meaningful way.
Yes, and actually
Hmm.
that delete part is really important. On my channel, I talk a lot about, especially within the professional world, saying no to things that are
Yeah.
not paid. Unless it's
Yeah.
something, like you said, that fulfills you in a way that's unique and you really want to do it, that's
Yeah.
different. But you don't have to say yes to things unless it's part of your contract. You can say no, because that's part of
Yeah.
that delete button a little bit to help reset you.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, teachers are so often tasked with doing things outside their job description. And actually, my wife wrote her graduate thesis on other duties not assigned, which was the title, which is like, that's in a lot of like people understand like, oh yeah, like let's say you are the only LGBT teacher that's out at your school, and like you're going to be asked to help lead the Gay Straight Alliance. Like, okay, like you may feel really called to do that, but it is one of those things, those other duties not assigned, that crop up. And people have so much compassion and they're naturally service oriented. It makes sense that you would want to do that. But at a certain point, you do have to start saying no to things that aren't paid, that aren't aligned with your values or what the life that you want for yourself. I run I employ therapists in my practice. We're a small practice, but I employ therapists, and I really wanted to grow and get to about like 7 or 8 therapists. Right now we're 3. And as I was consulting with people, they're like, oh, well, you need a physical location. Like people want to come and be in person. And people were saying, we think that your business could grow if you did this. And I was just like, we did try it for a few months, but no one wanted in-person services where we are in Los Angeles. People are busy. They don't want to drive more. And then I was just like, you know what? No, I don't want to deal with having a physical office. That is not the lifestyle I imagined for myself. I don't want to have to worry that there's like a window broken, or like the cleaning service didn't come, or like all the things that come with having an office. And I was like, am I willing to have a slightly smaller business if it means not having to deal with that? And the answer is yes. I am willing to have a smaller business. And similarly for teachers, there may be actually a financial trade-off. Like, am I willing to make $500 less a month if I get more hours to myself? Sometimes the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the extra tasks aren't worth the pay.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's like a very minimal amount, and you're thinking, oh, it's going to mean I'm not
Yeah.
going to be home on time, and then
I know.
it kind of puts you back for the rest of the day and the week. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, really thinking about that big picture when you take on extra tasks, and even for yourself as well, how you're
It's
doing it.
so hard when your job is so values aligned. And so it is a calling, and you're already underpaid as teachers, right? But it's so hard to assign monetary value to something like teaching, because the impact you're having is priceless. The meaning you can get from the work is limitless. And also, like, it is a job. You are compensated for it. And that gets really messy.
I appreciate you clarifying just the mess that it can be because it is
Yeah.
confusing for a lot of us because we feel this passion and yet we also feel sometimes like where do you stop giving and start allowing yourself to be refilled? And that's always a balance you're trying to, I think, navigate. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great description of it.
I also want to empathize with anyone listening that maybe is losing that passion and feeling like maybe this isn't a calling. Maybe I thought this is where I wanted to be and I'm questioning that. Like that's valid too. And money can absolutely be a factor in that questioning, and that's normal and okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, we're kind of finishing off here. Maybe what's a message you would wish every teacher could wake up and read on their bathroom mirror every morning? Something like they could write on
Yeah.
their lipstick. I'm thinking as a girl,
Yeah.
lipstick, but I don't know what guys would do. Post a note.
Yeah, I think it is around taking a breath, taking a beat. I know how frenetic the energy in a classroom can get, right? What you put out, the energy you put out, the students will pick up on. So if you come in very grounded, very solid in who you are, in your position as the leader of this classroom, they're going to respond to that. But if you pick up on their chaotic energy and you start feeding off of it, they're just going to get more and more chaotic, right?
So being grounded.
Yeah, that it will pay dividends in terms of like your classroom management and students feeling safe. Like, oh, someone's in charge here. They know what they're doing. They're good. I'm good.
And that can be especially challenging for new teachers
Yeah.
who I've worked with a lot and finding that
Yeah.
confidence. It's really about confidence. You're in front of a
Yes.
crowd of people for all day long. And, maybe you're 20 years old or something doing this for the first time. It's
Yeah.
not easy. So, yeah, if that's you, we understand as well.
Yeah, I
So,
just had a conversation with one of my therapists. She's pre-licensed, so like doing the equivalent of her medical residency with me for mental health. And, I say over and over, you sit in your clinical authority as a therapist and provide information and resources and grounding to these clients. And if they decide to take it, great. If they don't, okay, right? But like it is that like sitting in your authority as the leader and being benevolent about it. You are a benevolent authority
yeah.
and just sitting in that energy.
And everyone's a little different with that energy because as
Mm-hmm.
teachers, you see teachers who are really great at what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and they're so different. They can be great in so many
Yeah.
ways. I have a
Mm-hmm.
teacher that I know just amazing in terms of charismatic. I mean, we're all charismatic, but this person's charismatic, funny,
Mm-hmm.
entertaining, and others are more subdued, but still just as powerful, more
Yeah.
organized, more
Yeah.
straightforward. And I'm sure in therapy too, it's similar. Everyone's got their style, and
Yeah.
yeah, grounding in that, who you are.
Yeah. But regardless of like the actual like your vibe and your like actual energy level, like every teacher should strive to be a benevolent authority, whether that's high energy or more calm, right?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, being kind. I think for us, it's just I always thought if the kids know you care, then you can teach them anything. I think that's a big piece of what a
Yeah.
lot of teachers see it as well.
Parenting too. My mom used to joke, this is a benevolent dictatorship, not a democracy. This
I like
family,
that.
this classroom, this family is not a democracy. This is a benevolent dictatorship.
Yes, and you knew where you stood. You're like, this is where the line is.
Yes.
I like that. Okay, before I give you some kind of quick questions, just so we can get to know you a little better, is there anything final messages or thoughts you want to give to teachers that we haven't quite covered yet?
Yeah, if you're starting to show signs of burnout, act now. You do not want to get to moderate to severe levels of burnout. I have not worked with someone who was in a severe stage of burnout that didn't need to take medical leave to recover. Like it can get very severe. You can have all kinds of health problems, and you can, get put on a PIP or even, fired if your burnout is impacting you. So you want to intervene early, be really consistent in your burnout prevention efforts because it takes time. This is not something, a vacation is not going to fix your burnout. I'm sorry. It's just not. Like, you don't solve your burnout in a week or 2 weeks or even a summer. Burnout is healed and prevented over the course of many months with consistent practice of prioritizing yourself.
What a great message to remember and to know that if you're feeling like you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
to start early. If you're starting feeling any
Yeah.
of the things talked about in the beginning, especially those symptoms, that start making those adjustments and changes as soon as you can. Yeah. Okay. I feel like kind of fun It's a fun way to end this podcast. Just kind of a light note, kind of fun things about you. My questions are actually for teachers, but I just put therapist in the word bank. So if it doesn't make sense, you can just like be like pass, whatever. Okay, favorite therapist lunch.
I don't know. Today I had some leftover like taco stuff, but I work from home. So I think it would be like leafy greens with like some really good protein and a very flavorful dressing.
Balanced. I love it.
Yeah,
Worst therapist lunch.
none.
That's what a lot of people say.
Yeah. But you know what? If it's a string cheese and a candy bar, like that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you explain your therapy style in 3 words?
Direct, empathic, and relational, personal.
Favorite hobby outside of the therapy space?
I am a performing arts enthusiast. I am a season ticket holder at every major theater in the Los Angeles area, and I could talk about that for hours.
Really?
Theater,
Wow.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Peter, I love
Uh-huh.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Your best behavior management tip. I'm thinking emotional regulation tip, maybe instead of
Yeah,
behavior
yeah.
management.
Oh, I love this one. You can do this with your classroom. Ideally, someone would have like a bucket or a bowl of water, but it's fine if you don't. Just wet some paper towels, put them on your face, and hold your breath. What this does is it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what happens when you're underwater. And it basically shuts down all bodily processes that are not about like conserving oxygen to get it to your muscles and your brain. So it's your underwater survival mechanism. And if kids are like really emotionally acting out and like really struggling to regulate, like cold paper towels on the face, deep breath, hold the breath, you will see the nervous system just ground itself. So, and you can do this for yourself, right? You can also try it with an ice pack. I mean, ideally you have like a bowl of water, but like that's a little impractical in a classroom. You could do it at home.
Yeah.
So that one is a great like SOS strategy when someone's really like not grounded in the here and now, when they're having a flashback or a trauma response or like emotional outburst.
I have never heard of that, so that's just good
Mm.
to know. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's great for kids and for adults
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Okay, last little question here is best advice from a therapist mentor when you were first starting out.
I can't think of one from a therapist mentor, but I can think of one that a teacher said to me in high school that has just stuck with me. And that was, hey, it's going to be a lot easier to be Laurel at 25 than it is at 15. And that was very true. And then it turns out it was easier to be Laurel at 35 than it was at 25. And I'm about to be 40, and it's easier to be Laurel now than it was at 35. So I think like recognizing, like, yes, we are in the struggle. And if you're an early career teacher, like it will get easier to do what you do as long as you're taking care of yourself, as long as you're preventing or treating that burnout. Like teaching becomes easier. Like you start to just do things more on instinct. Like you know what you're doing the longer you're in the field. So just give yourself the grace and be like, yeah, this is really hard, and it does get easier.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I actually just had a birthday recently, and somebody asked me, "What do you think about getting older?" And I said, "I love getting older. I
Hmm.
feel like every year I get more confident in who I am, and
Yes.
I feel more grounded, as we talked about."
Yeah.
And so that advice from your high school teacher is really gold. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. I'm planning a big 40th birthday party because I'm just like, man, we're so lucky that we get to age and that we get to, experience life. I hope I'm not at the halfway point in my life, but if I am, like, I want the next 40 years to be incredibly meaningful and full of, deep relationships and profound experiences.
Yes, yes. I think life just seems to get better as you know yourself and
Yeah.
like you said, and appreciate all that age has to give us. So, yeah. Well, thank you, Laurel. I've really enjoyed this, and I think our audience is going to get so much out of all that you've shared, especially a teacher out there if they're feeling burnt out, that you are not
Hmm.
alone. They're not alone, and
No.
you've worked through kind of the different steps of things they can do today, and maybe they can also connect with your website. I'll put your stuff down below, and they
Yep.
can connect with you in that way,
Yep.
and any information they want to ask or connect with you about
Yeah.
in that way. So, yeah.
Happy to. Our website's laureltherapy.net, and we work with people in California, Florida, and a few other states.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.